August 27th, we presented to the Board of County Commissioners around the CPO and CCI modernization, which is really around, this first piece is really around the resolution order, modernizing some of the resolution and orders that govern this program. The board said, yes, go forward with that. So here we are. So for this evening, I'm going to give you just one slide overview, couple slides of background. Most of you have been with this program for a long time and are really familiar with it, and so I'm not going to spend too much time on either of those things. The timeline for this project, and then we'll get right into the elements. And so there are 5 elements that that we'll be including in the in a new resolution and order, and I'll present those to you, and then you will tell me all the things you think about those, and I will capture those notes. And that input, along with all the other input that we're collecting over the next 3.5 months, will be themed up and shared with the board so that they can, that can inform the first draft that gets produced of the new resolution order. So the overview for this project, the purpose of this project is really we've identified some immediate and longer term steps to modernize the county's CPO and CCI program, mainly starting with adjustments to Resolution and Order 8658, which is a foundational policy document. As many of you know, that's not the only resolution and order that governs CPO program, but this new resolution and order will and I'm blanking on the right legal language here, but it will usurp essentially, or replace, or relate to other resolution and orders like 8108, and there was another one in early 2000s.
114. I think supersede is the.
Thank you, supersede. I'm sorry, I'm home with COVID, so I'm not the top of my game today, but thanks, Bruce, for that. So as I mentioned, we presented at work session on August 27th. The board approved the staff recommendations to update the resolution and order 8658, which are really 5 elements that we'll talk about tonight. And that's all they've really approved, is take these 5 elements out to community, get some feedback, and then come back to them with a first draft. So with that approval on August 27th, that launched our community engagement portion, which is our opportunity to better understand considerations and concerns that you all and others want us to be aware of related to these new proposed elements. So this is very high level of some big points in time for the program since the 1970s, and many of you have been involved with the program for through lots of these periods in time. So I'm not going to read this to you or spend a lot of time. I think you all know generally the progression of the program. And with your longtime involvement, as you all know, you have also had a ton of contributions. This doesn't even scratch the surface for those things, but this was presented to the board, and I do just like to keep it in here because I think it's a good reminder of all of the hard work that you all put forward to this program and serving your communities, and the county really does appreciate that. This program's not going away. We just, it's time for it to be more in aligned with how the county is doing things now. So this timeline, you'll see we are here in September. So we started this conversation. This is the latest iteration of this conversation. This has been talked about for years, right? Getting to this point, but this most recent iteration began earlier in the spring of this year. We did some board briefings. We looked at all of the past documents, especially the transitional reports that many of you were involved in 2014, 15, 16, that time period. We looked at recommendations from that, as well as other documents that have informed that work, developed these recommendations, and we also looked at how all of the other jurisdictions in the state are handling their compliance with Goal 1, also just to inform us and help us make some to help us with the recommendations. So the board said, yes, these 5 elements are great, and take them out to community and let's see what we see. So that's where we are. after the end of this year, we'll, like I mentioned, we'll theme up all that information. We'll start working it into we'll share it with the board. We'll start working it into some drafts, and then March, April timeframe, we hope to have the first draft to the board for discussion. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it unless there are any quick questions before we get started. Fran.
Yes, I'm wondering, who are you working with from LCDC on this?
No one yet.
Okay, so, I'm on the State Community Involvement Advisory Committee. So if you need assistance about who to speak to, please feel free, but it's probably Sadie. But anyway, just want to make sure that LCDC is engaged because we don't know what other jurisdictions are doing relative to this.
We actually do know what all the jurisdictions in the state, so counties and cities, are doing, but yeah, happy to reach out when we get to that point. Okay. Any other questions before we jumped in? And I would ask that you use the raise hand function just so because I can't, I'm on one screen, so I can't see everybody. I know that there may be some folks that aren't sure how to use that raise hand function. So in that instance, maybe Bruce or Ika, you can help me out and let me know there's a hand up. You bet. Thanks. Okay, so there's this first of the 5 elements is modernizing the language. I don't know how familiar some of you are. I know some of you are very familiar with the language in these resolution and orders, but because they are from mainly from the 80s, they have a lot of reference to OSU extension, which we no longer have a contractual relationship with. So we will remove all of the reference to OSU extension in the language. We will also look at a more inclusive term for citizen or citizenry, such as community, which we use in practice now. It's just not codified in the language. And then we'll remove the gendered language. So any place where it says chairman or chairwoman, we would replace that with chairperson, things like that. So I am interested if you have thoughts about the modernize the language, but I do want to be really clear. We will be modernize the language. This isn't a should we, shouldn't we conversation. We will be doing it, but I would love to know if there are specific things that you are concerned about or ideas that you have about this. So this process will be, I'll share with you the element and what we're thinking, and then I have this slide, and I will just start writing down the things you tell me. So I'll open it up if anybody has any thoughts about modernizing the language.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just pull up the participant list just for your awareness. Shows me what order the raised hands come in, and so I'll just be calling on people based on that. We really want to be able to hear from everybody for all of these elements, and so if you've already shared a comment, I might skip you to go to other folks that haven't shared and then come back to you once we do that. So Fran, go ahead.
Yeah.
So one thing is, again, at the state level, we have already, even though it's in the Oregon statute says citizenry, but we're changing it to community. And so we have a way of approving that. And so again, I can tell you how we avoid having to change the legislation because we use it a different way and how we use it. The second point is that the reason I raised the issue about working with LCDC is because we are in the process of revisiting the community engagement. We have a new document that's going to be coming out very soon. So where you may have met with a lot of other jurisdictions, they too may be modifying to come to this state level. So the reason I mention it is because maybe this way, if you check with LCDC, you may only have to go through this once instead of a second iteration.
What's the time frame for that, Fran?
So I'm on the subcommittee that's working on it. And we had it in the work plan for changing goal 1 in 2025. So that part is the whole goal 1 is separate, but the community engagement with the inclusive diversity, equity, inclusion portion We're working on it right now. I can get you a date by when that will be released.
This year sometime?
Could be. Oh, actually, we're taking it to the commissioners. Probably it'll be approved like in the, let's see, it's not gonna be the January meeting this year. It's gonna be March of next year is when it will be presented and probably approved.
Great, thanks, Fran.
And I
I
can
also
keep you up to date with it if you're interested.
Yes.
that also reminds me that one of the slides in the presentation that we're taking notes on, Ika is actually helping me out with this, but it's a parking lot / bike rack slide. So any comments or considerations that you all are sharing that are not necessarily specific to these elements are being captured elsewhere, just so we don't lose those things for future work and consideration. So it looks like Mary and then Isla. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm glad that Washington County is finally catching up with some of the changes that we as CPO and CCI members had already tried to implement. And it works a lot better when some of these things happen from the top down rather than from the bottom up. But glad that you're finally catching up with what we've been concerned about. One of the questions that I have, I did listen to a meeting, Metro's meeting, their public engagement committee, and there they make a distinction between public engagement and community engagement. And they use the term community engagement to refer to communities that have been underrepresented in the protected classes. Has anybody really looked at that and raised concerns about using that term differently within kind of the same region?
Okay, let's see.
And
Oops.
you know what I'm referring to, correct?
Yep, I know exactly what you're referring to. Sorry, I just lost the screen here. Yep, and it is noted.
And is it a concern that you were wrestling with it all, or is it something that Metro's kind of off doing their own thing, and so we're just not going to worry about them, and we're not going to try to align language?
So what we're doing for this process is I'm really just gathering your questions and comments, and then we'll theme it all up.
Okay,
But
great, thank you.
yeah, go ahead, Isla.
Does Isla need to be changed to a panelist to be able to comment?
No, I've allowed her to talk and asking her to unmute, so it might be just a moment. She's declined a few times to become a panelist, so.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't know what it meant to be a panelist, so I didn't choose it, but we just felt that we want to welcome everybody in the community, but when it came to voting, citizenry became something that we wanted to include as a criteria for voting. So just wanted to put that in there.
Okay, go ahead, Caleb.
Hey, thanks. I just have a follow-up to that. I'd like maybe a clearer distinction about what they mean by citizenry. Does that mean someone who is, a legal, quote unquote, legal citizen, or is that, changing those requirements that are in there, someone who lives within the boundaries? It can the person who just spoke further define that, please? So
actually, what I can do is just add in that if that's included, you'd like that to be defined.
Thank you.
Just so that this doesn't become a discussion about that word, and we give everybody a chance to share their thoughts. do you have a preference one way or another that you want me to capture, Caleb, or just
Yeah,
that?
yes, I personally would like to maintain the current, someone who resides, lives, owns a business within the region. That would be my preference.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands up for modernizing the language. I'm gonna go ahead and move on, but if somebody
Let's
thinks
do.
of something, okay, yeah, feel free to let me know. Okay, so moving on to focus and scope. So this one is really about returning to the original focus of land use and transportation planning in unincorporated areas of Washington County. And so that's really looking to maintain the CCI's role under Goal 1 of Oregon's land use rules, and then, CPO as a more broad extension of that. So, yeah, go ahead, Mary.
So one of the questions I have is if the program is rolled back to only dealing with land use and transportation, community engagement or public engagement is much more than just land use and transportation. So are we looking at changes to the entire community engagement division? Or are we just focusing on the land use and transportation piece? And if you are just focusing on the land use and transportation piece, how will the county engage people, community members within other issues outside of land use and transportation?
For example, clean water services might.
Well, and clean water services is a really good example. We just had an issue in our CPO where a project is in the process of submitting a application, and they went in to cut trees, but trees were being cut in the wetland area, which was Clean Water Services jurisdiction. And Clean Water Services came in and did a stop order. So is that a land use and transportation issue? No, because it's Clean Water Services, but it's a role that the CPO and community can play in land use issues. So, and there are other issues that I'm sure there is a desire and need for community engagement. So who's going to pick up that other piece? And if you go back to the original resolution and orders, it's actually the 1980 resolution and order that sets up the land use portion of it. The 86 resolution and order brings in the quality of life issues that aren't necessarily land use and transportation. So I guess I'm wondering why we aren't looking at the whole community engagement piece, and how are we going to, or how is the county going to address the bigger piece of this?
Thanks, Mary. Let's see. And then it looks like
Jacqueline?
Good evening. This is Jackie or Jacqueline. I was wondering, sorry, Amanda, can you go back a slide again? I got a little distracted. Sure. I was feeling like land use included all natural resources. So I don't know if that, like all of our finite resources of our soil, our water, our air quality. I'm not sure if that collects Mary's comment or not, but if you could go back that one slide after you type that, that would help me again.
Sure. Let's see. So I can just share that because what what CCI and the CPOs do is really provide advisement to the board. The focus is really on things that the board has control over. So that and I'm not as versed in this but in terms of all natural resources, some of those things the board doesn't really have as much jurisdictional control over because they might be state governed things or what, some federal things and et cetera. So, so what I'm thinking about doing here is just to capture, clarify what is meant by, land use and transportation and
Yeah.
how that's related to all natural resources. Does that capture it, Jackie? Or
I think that helps me a little bit because as far as putting in new roads or some of these land use things, they have environmental impacts that go for our quality of life, our livability, protecting the finite resources. So I would hate to see that lost or gone. So the land use decisions is more than just mere business and economical.
okay. Okay, and then it looks like Fran and then Stan. Go ahead, Fran.
Yeah. So two things. One is, Mary, could you either put in the text or whatever it is, you cited the ordinance piece that was extended it beyond just the land use transportation. I think you said something about a specific piece. So let me know because I want to follow up on that specific ordinance piece. But the second one is,
I can just share with you, it's Resolution Order 8108 and it's linked to on our website.
Yeah, okay, I understand 8108, okay. The second point is that because the board is also the board of directors for Clean Water Services, the question is, where is that line drawn? Because you say they don't have control over, I understand, federal and state lands, but is all of this covered because of that?
Okay, so I'm just adding on to Mary's comment of considering, or maybe Bruce raised it, but considering clean water service issues, where's the jurisdictional authority?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
Amanda, looks like Tanya in our attendees was before Stan. So
Oh,
I just
sorry,
wanted
Tanya.
to elevate.
Okay. Go ahead, Tanya, and then Stan, and then we'll go back to Jackie.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that like as a newer member of kind of like the CPO program and recently having attended a few of these meetings, one of the kind of concerns that I have as a community member is I am both a representative of CPO, like if we decide to only focus on land use and transportation issues as a CPO, then I'm going to be doing stuff on the side, right? And from like that just feels like it makes the CPO program even more complicated and adds this whole other layer of like, I'm going to write to you all as part of the CPO because of this and have people from the county come and speak to about this. But also I'm trying to do other stuff with my neighbors and it's not CPO related. Like, isn't there like, wouldn't it just be much more simpler to continue to keep sort of like a variety of community engagement and advocacy initiatives under the CPO program? Because then you all don't have transparency or visibility into those other things. And also, those things are still going to be happening on the side.
And then it looked like, sorry, Ika, can you help me out?
Stan.
Stan's next.
Stan's
Okay.
next.
I'm patient. I appreciate all the comments that have come ahead. The origination of this whole program of the CPO and CCI which came out of the environmental issue of life that Mary even mentioned, that that's really becoming a more critical factor in the things that we are trying to address in our, not just our neighborhoods, but in our county, state, country, world. And I just think that we're kind of not addressing or attempting to do anything to address that. And I do think it is critical for us, not since the 70s, but and now, but beyond. And if we don't add or keep an eye on any of that, I think we're substandardizing our whole efforts here. And I just wish we would put this on the front burner instead of just letting it sit there unaddressed. So that's my comment.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. And I just noticed that Gretchen has her hand up. So before we go back to you, Jackie and Mary, we could go to Gretchen.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Two comments. One, most, not all, most of the urban unincorporated CPOs have part of their jurisdiction within a neighboring city. And I think it's important that as we go through this process, that the board realize we need to have some consistency between land use and transportation, and other issues with neighboring cities, whether it's CPO and part of it's in city of Beaverton or other CPO 7, etc. My CPO is more than half in the city. Most of 4M is in the city of Tigard, not all. And I think it's really important to look at consistency. The second thing that I want to raise is the issue of reevaluating the actual CPOs, because some of the CPOs are approaching 100,000 people in their jurisdiction. Others are a few thousand, and they have not been realigned since back in the 80s. And of course, the population of the county has tripled or quadrupled.
Gretchen,
that
that is a subject that that Amanda will bring up here subsequently.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you. So as far as focus and scope, I believe that some of my hopes would be for this to be it's a way for community members to ask LUT for help and for education opportunities. And it's a way to have a conduit situation of education between residents and the county government. So I really feel what Tanya was sharing about CPO being such a priceless platform and structure, that if we're restricted, then it's kind of a waste of our volunteers' time if we can't truly say everything and discuss, these different topics. But whether it is water or power or land use, that it's a way for us to ask for help for the resources that are available. And I strongly feel that way.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mary.
So I go back to my early years in the CPO program and why I was involved. It was one meeting a month that I could go to stay engaged with issues that were important within my community. And I think, you know, it's what Jacqueline was talking about. It was what Stan was talking about. It was what Tanya was talking about. A lot of us don't have a lot of time. And if you can go to one meeting a month that addresses quality of life issues beyond just the land use and transportation, and whether it be metro, whether it's the city that's adjacent to you that has huge impacts on your urban and incorporated, or you know, whether it's the school district and impacts that the school district is having. I think it's really important that we not lose track of the role that the CPOs have played in the past, that one meeting a month can help build a community and strengthen a community.
Well stated.
Thanks, Mary.
I think Dick Smith was next.
Oh, sorry. Oops.
Hey, Dick, you going? Suspense is killing me here.
Looks like Tanya has her hand up. I don't know if we want to go to Tanya while Dick gets his audio figured out.
Hey everyone, thanks for letting me speak again. You know, as Jackie spoke and then Mary spoke, you know, one of the things that I'm reflecting on is the fact that like community engagement is hard. It hasn't been easy navigating county politics, who to talk to, who to connect with. And I'm just thinking that if this is truly a program that is owned by the Office of Equity, then changing the scope to narrow it down this way is only really going to create barriers. I wonder if that's a conversation that the team has had, but it just seems like then it would require people to look for resources outside of the program and just complicate things. So just something I wanted to point out from access standpoint.
Excellent point.
Thanks, Tanya.
Let's see here. Did Dick ever get his, looks like you got it, Mary.
Well, I think she just put her hand down.
Oh, okay.
Is my hand up?
Nope. Go for it,
This is
Ayla.
I was just going to say, I want to reiterate what the other folks have said. You know, in the old days, there wasn't so many things happening in our quality of life and environmental issues. But for, say, you know, Intel asked to double the amount of emissions that they can put in the air. You know, we'd never hear about that in a LUT application. So maybe perhaps the comprehensive plan and all its goals needs to be augmented. So we are embracing these things that are, you know, infecting all of our environment. And maybe we need to also address the fact that we have these osmotic jurisdictions now where, you know, school districts, city districts, fire districts, all of us are crossing over in making, you know, significant changes in our lifestyle. And I think the CPO needs to be open to speak to and address any and all of those things. And we actually might become a real catalyst between different jurisdictions. Ultimately, I think we're going to become more important than ever.
Excellent point. Looks like Stan, Zoe hasn't gone yet. Let's let her.
Okay. Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, my name is Zoe. I am, I guess, a part of CPO 6. I've owned a house in Beaverton near Aloha for about a year now. And as a transplant to the community, I didn't grow up in Beaverton. And I got a letter sent to me in the mail. I thought, what a cool way to like get involved and also to hear the historical context of what happens throughout Washington County that has led to the present. And then also just to kind of bring it back on the webpage that's on Washington County's website, it says that CPOs focus on the topics that affect how and where people live, such as transportation, parks and trails, housing and business development, safety, public health, emergency planning, education, and more. And I think as someone who just wants to be informed and works a full-time job, so does my husband, like there isn't any one place to do that. And I think having being able to share from elders to young people like myself who want to stay in this community, build this community up, I think that it's really important that we have this dialogue, especially like as a busy professional. Like I only have 2 hours, out of the month that I can be here, and trying to live life. And so I just think like I want to ask what prompted like the desire to narrow the scope, because I think I'm missing that. I'm not finding anything online. And then also like, are you going to discuss alternatives? So yeah, this is very cool. And yeah, thank you.
Sure. And I'll just share, because this was part of the a bit from the work session, but just briefly, the interest in narrowing the scope is really something that came from the board to really help hone in on what advisement they were looking for from CPOs and CCI. And because the county has 36 other boards and commissions, there are that focus on many of the other issues that are mentioned, like public safety and housing, things like that. And so really looking at how to use the time and the energy in a more focused way, I think. So the idea was really that the decisions that a CPO or CCI might make would be focused on those things that the board is looking for advisement around, land use and transportation, or CW, whatever they might want to include on those issues, but that CPOs would still be a place where community updates or other topics could be shared, presentations could be shared, just the decision, the advisement or the decision would be about those land use and transportation, or whatever the board would want to focus on or be asking for. So what we've talked about is land use and transportation within unincorporated areas, because the county doesn't really make city decisions, and so that's why the clarification there. Go ahead, Stan.
So I'm going to counter the commissioners, because I do think that the CPOs and the CCI is the whiteboard. We are the discussion. We are the concerns. We are, if anything, the direct line to the things that affect us every day in every way, that the commissioners and the county administrators and departments should be most concerned about, because we are the boots on the ground in our neighborhoods that know what is happening much more than any other department or personnel that works for the county.
I think that's good. I want to move this along because we have some other points to cover still. Thank you for that, Stan. And Jackie?
I love what you just shared, Stan, and it just feels like the community participation, going back to the language and words, if it's just constituent participation, or I mean, if it's really the conduit and the boots on the ground and everyday people like us talking to our decision makers, then I totally agree. Thank you for that.
Okay, Tanya, do you have your hand up to say something? Okay, let's give Amanda the go ahead for the next slide.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So membership and eligibility. This is really about bringing the CPO or bringing CCI into alignment, and the CPOs really with how the county organizes all of its appointed boards and commissions. And so what we would be looking at is transitioning the CCI process so that the people who wanted to be on the CCI would apply through the same process we use for our other 34-ish boards and commissions. And then the board would appoint CCI members, and the criteria of that would still be figured out, but it would be representative of all the CPOs, because that's what the board would be looking for. And then the CCI would be charged with appointing CPO leadership. And the way we do that with boards and commissions is the boards and commissions themselves make a recommendation on who should be appointed, and then the board has the appointing authority. And so the brass tacks of that could still be figured out, but this was the proposal that that the commissioners wanted to explore more.
Okay, Mary Lou, what do you got?
Well, my first comment is kind of shock, because I don't see the point in having the board appoint people for these positions. In other words, you apply for a position and then you're appointed by somebody from the board. That just doesn't seem right to me.
Well, that's how the planning commission is.
Well, we aren't the planning commission.
No, this is a change though. Okay.
I'm just saying I don't like it and I object to it.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Milo.
Jill.
Oh, thank you. My comment was right in alignment with what was just said. And as far as, that they appoint and remove the members of the CCI, that the county does that. And then they can put people on the board that, can follow what they want to do. It just seems like, they're gaming the system, and that the community people are taking a back, we're secondary to what who the county wants to be in charge of membership. And that's goes against goal 1. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Jackie.
Thank you. I am opposed for board appointed positions. Like Tanya had said, it's hard to be an engaged constituent and participate in local government, local, state, etc. I believe that the board appointments would add the political layer and divisions that I believe are trying to be avoided. And the CPOs, I believe, are an opportunity for many of the constituents and residents to have their first experiences with local government as their educational opportunities. And I believe it would take that away.
Thank you. Mary.
Oh, I think you're muted, Mary.
There, I have mixed feelings about the board appointment. I think there are some places where a board appointment could be good, but it seems like it's backwards. It should be more of a board blessing as opposed to a board appointment, we have a hard enough time getting people to apply to serve on CCI, that trying to get people to apply to something without any sort of background would be really, in fact, the purpose that CCI serves at this point is for a gathering of leadership from the CPOs. And because of that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to bring people in from the outside. Although we have tried to expand our membership through allowing communities of interest to provide CCI members. And there, I think could be some real value in having board appointed from those communities of interest. But it seems to me that the CPOs should still be allowed to appoint their own CCI members. And the idea of CCI determining who the leadership of the CPOs are, how is CCI going to know who the people in the community are? There's just no way that will function. Even the CPOs that are up and functioning have a hard enough time identifying within their own community people to serve as leadership. So I think it's something that really needs to have a lot more thought put into it. But again, one of the questions I have is, right now we have no protection from slap suits as leadership. If we have that board blessing or appointment, does that mean we have better protection? Does that mean that if we get board appointment, are we going to have to fill in paperwork with the state as officials of the county? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before we start talking about making this big change.
Thank you, Mary. Let's see. Let's go with Fran next.
Hey,
Had my hand.
Oh, actually, sorry, it was Tanya and then Gretchen and then
Very good.
Fran.
Okay.
And Ayla has had her hand up too.
Wait, so who's next?
I've had my hand up for quite a while. This is Ayla.
Go ahead, Ayla.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. And then Todd.
I'm absolutely opposed to this, A, for political reasons, B, because the directive is supposed to be from the community, advising the county on what our issues are, not the other way around. We are to generate our own leaders, our own essential issues, and let you know what they are. And that will not happen with appointed. It's a conflict of interest. It's just so wrong on so many levels. I won't take all your time at this time, but it's absolute opposed. I tried to be on the planning commission for 3 times and I'm never chosen because it's political issues. And I'm just saying that's just one typical example, and it just cannot happen. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey there.
Okay. Yeah,
Amanda.
go ahead. Hi,
This is
go ahead,
Tanya.
Tanya.
Hi. So I am also opposed for a variety of reasons. Some of them already mentioned, but I do think that, if the board is able to appoint leadership, then we have a lack of accountability, right? So I would imagine that there's going to be some sort of like homogeneity of thought in the types of viewpoints that make up the leadership group. I also think it might create some echo chambers. And I think that, again, it does create a barrier to access. I'm on the steering committee of a CPO now. And I've just been a part of the program for 6-8 months. I'm a person of color, which I know is something that the county has been trying to do in getting diverse perspectives. Would I have applied? Probably not. So again, just, creating more barriers, and possibly bias. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that was Tanya who just spoke.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
It looks like Gretchen is next.
Hi, I agree with a lot of the comments, but I'll be very direct. One, you're clearly politicizing the position. I mean, unfortunately, members of the board have their own biases. Secondly, the application process is very cumbersome. I've used it. Thirdly, we definitely would be subject to the state annual form regarding potential biases. It's a hassle to do it. I think you would have a lot of people be uncomfortable applying for something. It's intimidating to do a formal application for a lot of the public, particularly folks of color. And it doesn't make sense.
All right. We got Fran next.
I hate to keep citing the state level, but since this is a trickle down from the state, the community and involvement advisory committee, the way that process works is that we have a form, an online form, people apply to the current committee. The current committee evaluates based on a number of factors, and then we take that recommendation to the LCDC for their approval. So much like that model, is the state's version of it, of an advisory committee in community engagement. So I'm thinking that may be one of the approaches. Just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Fran.
And my opinion is also, it's kind of the, if someone's appointed, then it's very easy to play back just exactly what the appointer wants them to say. So this makes it much more objective.
Stan?
This is one of those things that, I remember when voting was so easy. I remember when getting my driver's license was so easy. I remember when going to college was so easy. But overcomplicating how to have a person be able to raise their voice, to speak about a concern or something that is affecting them in their neighborhood or street, is being reduced to a nomination process or some degree of, this isn't, let me boil it down. This isn't representation of the community, of the people that live in our county. And it just isn't, it's turning into almost a political disastrous low-level methodology of simplifying it to a point of nobody is really being able to voice their concerns or have their perspectives even considered at such an elementary level that this is ridiculous on every level that I can think of.
Okay. I
Thanks,
think
Dan.
Zoe,
Yeah, I think Zoe's next.
Okay, hi. Yeah, so I think listening to what you were saying before about how there are 36 subcommittees, and pardon me for getting the CCI and the CPOs mixed up. But I think what brings into my mind is results. Like what are the goals here? And by appointing people, that's also creating a barrier for new people to potentially get involved. I think because if they would have to know the people at the board, it makes things getting involved much more cumbersome. And then also to come back to the results thing, by just saying, oh, we have these suggestions, and you have 36 different things to measure, where are we going to see those results? Because you can always kick the can down the road. And I think it just creates another layer of confusion and makes it hard to get things done. But that's,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna here weigh in.
No, I got one last thing.
Okay,
Sorry.
get it out.
What about inclusiveness? What the heck does this have to do with DEI? Honestly. And that's my final point.
Okay. Speaking as an individual, having dealt with malign players getting involved in CPOs, having the board vet the CCI leaders has some interest to me. CPO 1 and 7 dealt with white supremacists who are quite antagonistic, and there's something about having the CCI leaders vetted by the board that has some attraction. The CCI dealing with the second part, appointing the CPO leaders, is really cumbersome and doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't think that feels really hard to see how that would work. So that's my piece. I think Jim was next.
I came to this meeting late, so I didn't see a lot of the presentation. So I'm speaking a little bit of a uninformed position. But I was at the Board of Commissioners meeting. You know, there's a conflict of interest there where they have the Board of Commissioners meeting the same as this meeting. Whereas here we are community leaders, but it's difficult to testify and be at two meetings at one time. I agree with many of the comments here, everything from beginning with Mary Lou at the shock she has that the county's proposing this. And then down to Stan's point of, is this inclusiveness? No, this would be an extra step. It wouldn't let people just come in off the street and, provide input at a community meeting. So I'm shocked, as other people have said, that the county is proposing this. One of the benefits in Washington County is that we have a unique program. We used to have one of the most unique programs in the whole state, maybe in the country, as far as it being administered by an educational institution. Oregon State University did a wonderful job, and now it looks like the county's trying to control participation, and I just don't like it. I think that some other counties, they use their planning commission as their citizen involvement, and that's just not really being inclusive. It is becoming political, having to be appointed. This doesn't make sense to me. And I think some of our CPOs have had great success in challenging the county on some of these things, and I'm sure we will in the future.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Dawn?
Oh, howdy. I am Dawn Mobley with CPO 4. I'm really new to the group. I guess my 2 cents being a newbie, was I don't know if I would be involved if it wasn't for the fact that the access is, provided in my own community to come to the meetings, to understand what the meetings provided over the years. And then at this point now kind of stepping into the role of helping with the meetings. I think being asked to come to these CCI meetings, if I was appointed to do that and I accepted that, I think if somebody had asked me to fill that an application of some sort at the county level, I don't think I would have a problem with that. I wouldn't assume that I would be being overly vetted or background check or something along those lines. But at least a little information about who I am and where I'm from makes sense. And maybe even the leader of our group, once the president or however, can't remember exactly what that role is called to be accurate, but I would think once you identify who that leader is within the different CPOs, again, maybe filling out an application so that you're on some kind of record with the county of who you are would make sense. But again, I don't think the top down works here. I don't know if you would have any involvement from the community if you're not welcome. I guess it's kind of, I don't think I would have felt welcome any other way without making it feel like this is something where it is driven by those in your community and anybody can join. I mean, I think that needs to be an important piece of the CPO. So thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
I tend to agree with a lot of what has been said. I'm thinking that it is important that we be inclusive. And part of being inclusive, of course, is knowing who it is that we are talking to and what is their particular perspective. I don't think it's possible to eliminate all bias. So I think it's more a case of, do people follow some sort of protocol when they're talking with others where they may be in some level of contention, but are still respectful of those that they are speaking with or speaking in opposition to or in favor of. Somehow we have to be nice about how we do things.
Thanks, Paul.
Janet?
If I remember correctly, on the slide previous to this, I think one of the goals was to make the CCI consistent with all the other, 35 boards or however many there are in the county. And my comment is, this is different. This is supposed to be, as everyone else has said, community generated. So I disagree that having this board be the same as all the others should be a goal. I think it should be different because the character of it is different. It's community driven, and that should be, as someone else said, from the bottom up. So don't make it the same as everything else, because I think the county needs these voices.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stan, do you have another one?
Yeah. The words I'm not seeing on this, though Paul did have it included in his statement, finally, is what community is diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Can we get that written out on this? Thank you.
Right. Jim?
Thanks.
I wanted to bring up, I was looking at the notes on the whiteboard up there, and SLAP suits is SLAPP.
Yeah, thanks for the catch.
Stands for strategic lawsuits against public participation.
Yep.
And I just think that's important. I think that there's a check and balance system here that needs to happen. And I think Mary raised the point earlier of legal representation in case there is a SLAPP suit. So that would be something I would want to get an opinion on before doing anything else with the CPO.
So really,
if it goes through these changes.
Thanks. And I think ICA's capturing that on the bike rack parking lot. I'm not sure if you caught that earlier, Jim, but for the things that aren't specific to these elements, we're including so that they don't get lost.
good. I think that in the interest of time, we've captured a tremendous amount on this subject. So if I see Gretchen and Tanya still have your hands up, are those, Tanya, do you want another go?
Yes, I'll be quick, really quick. I think that what makes Washington County really unique is that it's considered one of the most diverse counties in the state. And I think that as we think about modernizing our community engagement programs, we definitely need to keep that in mind. And as we think about like making this modernizing this program, I think we have the opportunity to be a differentiator in the way that we have inclusive practices for this program. I think with all of these kind of modernization changes, and this, is probably more than the membership eligibility thing. We seem to be losing some sort of like, I guess the board seems to be losing some sort of like credibility with its current members. And with this new kind of voting process, I think it's just continuing to erode that credibility. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. We'll capture that on the parking lot bike rack.
Okay, so let's have Amanda move on to the next point.
Okay, so this one is similar to modernized language. It's not as negotiable as some of the others, but we are interested to hear if there are considerations that you want us to keep in mind or concerns. And so this is really specific to clarifying that how CCI and CPOs fall under the public meetings and records law, and that would of course include training and all these things that I know you currently aren't getting with consistency or regularity, but this one is really about that. So clarifying that in the resolution order language.
Janet, is your hand still up?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I forgot to put it that way.
Okay.
Okay, lower.
Mary.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mary.
So one of the questions that has not been answered for me, when we redrafted the CCI bylaws, we were really careful with the subcommittees that the subcommittees were not supposed to speak or essentially have a voice of their own. They were supposed to make their recommendations to CCI, and CCI then was supposed to issue the letters. So I guess I have a question about if the subcommittees don't have authorization to speak directly to the board, should they fall under the public meeting laws?
Thanks, Mary. And I think Stan, you're next.
Yeah.
3 words: diversity, equity, inclusion. And Mary brings up a point that I think is interesting, that if the CCI has this consideration, if a CPO is embattled with a development or something that is going on in their particular neighborhood, why wouldn't they have that same consideration?
But can you just clarify which consideration, that they were fall under public meeting law, or that they would be able to
Public
speak
meeting,
directly?
the
Okay.
public meeting law, that they should have the same consideration due to the fact that the CCI as a whole may not necessarily agree with it, but it is still a particular situation that is affecting them directly. Just as a thought.
Thanks.
Thank you. Janet.
My hand isn't up.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Kayla.
If it is,
Hey, I just wanted to make sure that it made it into the notes. Amanda, you mentioned this right as you brought the slide up, but the lack of training and lack of consistency of that training, and I think that dovetails into public meetings law. In you know, from my perspective in CPO 6, learning that our subcommittee needed to follow public meetings law was a surprise to us, and that was a novice mistake on my part. But once we learned that, we definitely began to follow those requirements. But it took us a lot of work to be able to actually figure that out and to learn that. And I also, so like definitely about the training, like that we need more training if that's going to be an expectation. But I also feel like that's, you know, it does create a barrier of access. Because you know, I'm lucky enough to have worked in the nonprofit sector for the past 15 years, so I know Robert's Rules of Order, but not everybody does. And so, you know, is that an undue barrier for volunteers who are unpaid to have to follow all of these requirements that create, you know, an administrative burden? So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. And I want to point out that OEICE has scheduled public meeting law training coming up in October. So this subject will be explained, I'm sure, in detail. So just keep in mind that we will get training on public meeting laws, and we have that fun experience to look forward to. So, Jim?
One of the biggest issues and problems for most CPOs has been a lack of participation. So I guess I wonder, do you think that this a move towards this modernization would increase participation or decrease participation? And my look at it says that it will not increase participation. It's 2 more hoops to jump through.
It's a darn good concern. Ken?
Yeah, I kind of tacking on here. I think talking with Caleb in the past, we were kind of struggling, as Caleb has mentioned, with the disclosure of our subcommittee meetings and having those. So we're opposed to having to report and document that. I think it adds undue burden and complications to the function of the CPO. It complicates the freedom of expression for members to meet and discuss things without having to document everything. But the CPOs take the advice of the subcommittees. So the subcommittees can meet and not have to document what their meeting is all about, and then they can report that to the CPO. And the CPOs, of course, then they can be under the disclosure documentation criteria. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Paul, what do you got?
The fact that people want to be involved at all, it could be at several different levels. Those that want to be regularly involved, so in other words, become somewhat of an official part of a group. That's one thing. But there are people who are only concerned about specific issues, and when those are paramount, they want to be involved. we don't really want to create a barrier to those people that want to be involved in that respect. And when you talk about training, I'm thinking there's levels of training where people can talk about specific issues only, and they have no intent of becoming a regular member of a group. But those that do want to be regularly part of something, you have to make it something that they don't have to go over a lot of hurdles in order to get in. I'm not sure that when it comes to appointing people, if the objective is to make sure that it's understood who they are, so the applying is more of a formality to introduce the person to the group and to the wider audience. If it's done in that sense, then it makes sense. But if it's a case of restricting only to those people I think fit into the situation, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So much of what has already been said about this, I agree with. Much of what has been said in objection, I also agree with. So I'm thinking when we modernize, we need to think in terms of what a kind of protocol do we want to have in place for people who want to participate but do not want to be a long-term involvement, and they can still be heard.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think Tanya, do you have your hand up for another one?
Yes, I do. So I've been kind of thinking about this a little bit. And when I think about modernization and like program requirements, I think about like a standardization of the CPO program, like, for example, creating some sort of toolkit that outlines like Zoom meetings and meeting uploads and new member training and possibly refresh bylaws. I think that what makes it so complicated to participate in the program and do all the steps kind of required to document for like the public use is the fact that there's just so much to kind of information upon onboarding. And so having some sort of like toolkit to make it easy for people to follow the process, I think is going to be key.
Good point. Thank you. And Mary.
Absolutely. Tanya hits the nail on the head in terms of difficulty of bringing in new people who have enthusiasm, but get hit by the fire hose of and not even knowing what direction the water's coming from when they step into the roles. But one of the questions I have, and it was actually forwarded to me by somebody within our CPO, what happens if we don't follow the public meeting laws? Are we personally liable, or do we get our hands slapped? Does the county banish us? Do we get brands? I mean, what happens if we don't? And is that something that's going to be covered under the public meeting laws training that we have?
Good point. Stan, looks like you have another one.
Yeah, and I follow with Tanya. She's like the most brilliant, one of the most brilliant people on the panel today, along with all our other esteemed diehards. I'm a newbie, actually, of 10, 12 years. But one of the things that I have always thought we should, in the beginnings of any member coming on board, is there should be something like you get when you get a new device or a new program or something like that, and it has something called shortcuts. So you can get up and running in 5, 3, 2 minutes. And just to help in this modernization of why isn't that incorporated? That could be incorporated in this so that there's a process of getting the most basic things to how do you get started? How do you get going on this so that you can get not that you know everything, but you at least have the possibility of following the most basic rules and knowing what is expected and that type of thing without overburdening somebody that is just wanting to say, hey, I think we have a problem here. Whoever is the masterpiece of all the meanderings out there, so that we can at least have some sort of a semblance of what the process should be.
So we've diverged from the public meeting law specifically to the lack of overall training, which are really two kind of related but sort of cousin issues. So
yes, but they are part of the
oh yeah, I mean, and it's clear if we were to have a conversation about overall training that every, you know, the various issues would apply. This specifically is public meeting law, which, you know, is a demanding subject. So
yes, and I will counter one more time in that. So the training happens in a few weeks here. But
it's not training it's public meeting law training. It is not CPO training.
Okay, so when does the CPO training
We don't
start?
have that scheduled yet.
Okay, so
and we've captured your notes in the bike rack parking lot, Stan, and others who have shared about onboarding and a toolkit, and we know the handbook needs updating, and all of that is in the plan for once we have a new resolution in order. So definitely we've heard that from folks.
Okay,
and
I want to move this conversation along because we are running out of time. So Mary Lou, what do you got?
Just a clarification. This portion is titled CCI input. So my question is this for the purpose of getting info to the board from the community? Or maybe it's to get info from the board to the community? So I've always thought that the purpose of the CCI was to collect information from the CPOs and have a direct route to the board with our concerns, our ideas, whatever. But I'm getting the feeling that perhaps that's kind of backwards from how it is proposed. That maybe it's the board is more interested in giving us information that we are supposed to disseminate to the CPOs. And if that's the case, that is just completely backwards from what I thought.
So I'm just noting that on the bike rack parking lot.
Yeah.
Oops.
Very good. Well, let's move, let's let Amanda move on to, I think, your final topic, right?
Yeah, this is the final one. And in the work session presentation, it was called geography, but really it's about boundaries. So I just titled it boundaries because that's more clear. So as was mentioned earlier by, I think maybe Gretchen brought this up, I can't remember exactly, but the boundaries for the CPO, the various CPO boundaries are not level by any stretch of the imagination. Some CPOs have 1,800 people that live within their boundaries, and some of them have 90,000 people that live within their boundaries. And so certainly a lot has changed in Washington County since those boundaries were created. In terms of growth and demographics, et cetera. And so really this is about trying to do two things. One, level that a bit and align with commissioner districts so that it can be really clear who is the decision maker that you all should be directing your advisement to for certain issues or your concerns to. As it stands right now, the boundaries and commissioner districts overlap. And so maybe you mostly think of yourself under District 2, but you also have District 4 in your CPO boundary, that sort of thing. So the proposal here is to align the CPO boundaries with commissioner districts, and then within each of those commissioner districts have 1 to 3 CPOs, depending on what folks would like to do within those boundaries.
And so, Mary.
So the question is are the boundaries there to make it easy for the commissioners, or are the boundaries there easy to make it for the people who live within the CPOs? We don't necessarily, as CPO leaders, need to talk to just one commissioner. We can count to 3 too. And we have learned that, yes, counting to 3 is very important. So actually having your CPO split between 2 commissioner districts has some advantages. You know, that is as it is. But as a land use and transportation person who is focused on code, one of my concerns is we will end up with multiple community plans within CPOs, and we possibly will end up with splits between school districts, park districts, and other service providers. And I think that ends up being something that, and every time the commissioner districts change, we'll end up having to change our CPO boundaries. And having consistency within your boundaries is pretty important. I have some concerns about only 3 CPOs per commissioner district. And I understand with funding, it's difficult to fund more CPOs. But again, is this about the needs of OEICE, or is this the needs of the community? Some of the strongest CPOs are some of the small ones because they really are a core of the community. So
excellent.
Multiple comments in there.
Thank you, Mary. Fran.
I concur with what Mary said about if I remember correctly, the CPOs were aligned with the community plans, and those are really key drivers, and then the other areas as well. The second part has to do with, I lost my train of thought. Wait a minute. When you say about 90,000 people in some CPOs, are we talking about 90,000 in the unincorporated count? Because that's a big difference. The CPOs are currently for the unincorporated areas, which are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's hard for me to believe that any one of these CPOs covers 90,000 people in an unincorporated area. So I think we may need to adjust those numbers based on the number of people living in the unincorporated area, assuming that we are still only addressing the unincorporated areas.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thanks, Fran. I'm noting that, and just for clarification, no, the CPO boundaries cover jurisdictions, cities, etc. So that's why part of the interest in are they about unincorporated areas, or are they about everybody?
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we are only covering unincorporated areas, and that the NACs, the neighborhood action committees, are the ones that are the community advisory to the, again, it has to do with certain topics specifically, but the NACs are the ones that advise the cities.
Only in Beaverton.
Well, as in Beaverton, then you have Tiger, and everyone they all have different kinds of public.
Some of them don't, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here. So I noted your comment.
Yeah, but
Thanks.
we need to clarify this when you're talking about boundaries. Let's get real clear and consistent.
Ken?
Okay. I believe that the best thing to do would be to have the CCIs get together with all of their CPOs and give direction for how these boundaries are restructured. In other words, the CCI is directing the commissioners or whoever what the new boundaries should be. That means that the CCI has to get together with all of the CPOs, and the CPOs would all agree as a conglomerate group with the CCI on what we think the new boundaries should be, because we're the only ones that have the best feeling on what those boundaries are and how best they could be reorganized. So, in other words, take it out of the commissioners or whoever's making the decisions to restructure it, put it in the hands of the CCI, and we give them direction on what to do.
Thanks, Ken.
Paul?
Agree completely.
I think part of when you talk about boundaries, it's a question of who are you representing with those boundaries. If it's like the commissioners or other representatives who are dictated by law to have a certain equalization between how many people are represented, that's one thing. But CPOs don't operate in that sense. And this notion that they're either incorporated or unincorporated, I don't think that is an apt distinction at all. It's CPOs are like communities of interest, so to speak. That is, most of the people have some of the same issues, and as a consequence, they can get together and talk about those issues and come up with solutions to those issues. So the CPO should be something that is open to dealing with whatever livability issues may come up. We can talk about land use. We can talk about things like fire protection, things like services that are lead to people having good health, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of different things that would be important within a CPO. So the CPO boundaries, if they're aligned according to demographics of some kind, in case of population, that's one thing. So if you think that a CPO with 90,000 people in it makes sense, well, historically, we've never had the kind of representation where we actually represented everybody that's in the CPO. But we have people who are concerned about what's happening in the CPO and trying to find solutions to problems that have been clearly identified. And whether that involves several thousand people or just a few people who are really forward thinking.
Okay, very good. I want to move along. Mary?
My comment about OEICE funding wasn't captured in the bullet point, and I want to read from Goal 1. Financial support. The level of funding and human resources allocated to the citizen involvement program should be sufficient to make citizen involvement an integral part of the planning process. So we can't ignore the Goal 1 in favor of the county's budget issues.
Okay, thanks, Mary. We'll make
And
sure that
Zoe?
gets it onto the bike rack.
Okay, just to be quick here, I think this really depends on if you're changing the nature of the CPOs and the CCI to land use and transportation versus how it exists now. And then also, I really think like this is my first meeting ever. So from an outsider's perspective looking in, making kind of more clear what the framework is, because when talking about, oh, our boundaries for this commissioner lie here. And then I understand that commissioners and their staff have only so many resources. So kind of mapping that out and making that more clear, I think is going to be again, this is my opinion from an outsider's perspective, but making that more clear of how this all works to make best and most efficient use of county funds and people's time.
Thank you. Ben.
Bruce, is my hand showing? This is Ayla. I'm just kind of curious.
No, your hand does not show as being raised.
Well, I don't know how else to do it. I tap to speak and it doesn't do anything else.
Okay, well, why don't you go next then?
I'm sorry. I don't know why it's. Is there supposed to be?
Ayla, there's a raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen, or should be, and that's the raised hand, which is different from the mute and unmute.
Okay, I'm not seeing it because I'm on my phone.
That's okay. Go ahead, Ayla.
Oh, I'm just saying I agree that the commissioners are kind of a secondary reason to put a boundary on a CPO. I do believe it is common interest in a certain topic, but I do think that primarily we need to look at the zoning of an area so that we are incorporating the folks that are grouped together with the same kind of farming zoning or timber zoning. And also, if you do have a municipality in your CPO that you incorporate its entire UGB, so that you are representing the whole municipality and not having it split up in two different CPOs. So those folks can actually go to one CPO and get represented. In banks, we have several of those issues and they do need to be addressed.
Thank you. Now, Ben.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to throw CPO 3 out there as a strong example of a CPO that'd be severely negatively impacted by a change like this, because up until the most recent redistricting, we were split right down the middle of commissioner districts. They were split between Commissioner Fye and Commissioner Rogers districts. And functionally speaking, there wasn't anything cohesive. If we had been split in half by that, we think of ourselves as, Garden Home, Raleigh Hills. That is what has held us together, and has for quite a long time. And then also the group of people who attend on a regular basis, one of the value adds that they get is presentations by our local service districts. Those service districts don't change. We don't suddenly have different fire department reps or different police reps, different school reps, different water department reps coming just because a commissioner district changed. So the cohesive and the continuous is the communities. The commissioner districts are ephemeral.
Indeed. Caleb.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I think that there could be some disruption that occurs, like was mentioned earlier, if boundaries were to change. I think we already have a hard enough time. It was brought up earlier about the land use and transportation and the community plans, and we already have a hard enough time just getting updates on that. So changing the boundaries just feels like we're kicking the progress down the road to change things up for something that we didn't really particularly ask for. So just want to put that out there. Thanks.
Thanks. And Gretchen, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, I want to make sure that the rules should be different for the rural CPOs versus the urban area CPOs, because obviously they have less population, but they certainly have their own sets of concerns, and that should be the critical decision-making issue for the rural areas.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands up, I'm going to make a few comments. I've thought about the boundaries a lot, and the boundary using the commissioner districts. I mean, the sad reality is that most people don't know who their county commissioner is. And so it serves the county commissioners to align the CPOs with their districts, but it doesn't, as Ben pointed out, we identify with geographic specific locations and the commissioner districts don't consider that. And I would suggest that depending upon the function, specific functions of a CPO, that different kinds of boundaries might make sense, in that geography is a very strong reason for a lot of the CPO's activities, and the commissioner districts don't track the geographies. I won't, in the interest of time, go on to share some of more ideas on this subject, as we'll have a chance to consider this extensively in the future. So I would like to let Amanda get on with her recovery from COVID. Thank you. And so unless somebody has a very strong statement they want to make, I would like to conclude this part of the agenda. And seeing none, let's
Well,
thank Amanda. Jim, what do you got?
This has been a presentation to CCI. I would encourage the county to make the same presentation to each CPO so that CPO members can get a feel for what's happening, and the county can get a feel for what the reaction will be, whether it will be positive for public participation or whether it'll decrease participation. So I would like to see the county doing similar presentation at all the CPOs, maybe putting a couple of CPOs together, but I really think it's important to get down to the actual membership, down to the citizen level on this.
Thanks, Jim. That's a great segue to my final slide, which is to just share the next steps. So as I mentioned, we're conducting this community engagement process until the end of the year. That involves it's kicked off with this initial, like, very CCI specific listening session, but then we will do something on October 21st for all the CPO and CCI members who may come to that training. There will be an opportunity there to provide input as well, in the same way to the 5 elements. And then between October and November, we will host 2 additional countywide listening sessions open to anybody, not specific to CPO members or CCI leaders, but the board wanted to hear from anyone else who might want to give their input into these elements. During that time, and really through the end of the year, we will also be available for any CPO that wants an additional opportunity to provide input. We have this roadshow essentially. So this is kind of the test case for that, but we're happy to take that out to any CPO that wants that. I think we might be going to 12C, or I think we're tentatively scheduled to go to 12C, but really happy to go to any CPO that wants an additional opportunity. And then there will also be an online survey, similar, if it'll be the 5 elements, and an opportunity to provide input for anyone that didn't have a chance, has something else they want to share, wants to share it out, with their full membership, whatever that might look like. And then, as I mentioned, we will present all this input to the board, and then use it to inform the first draft that we'll bring to the board in next 2025 late spring. So thank you all so much for all that you shared. This is really helpful. Not just for me to hear this, and also to be able to share this information, and to just kind of see how this goes, and then use it to improve upon this process as we go forward.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda. Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Stan, what do you got?
Will this presentation and all our comments be sent to us?
Yeah. I'll make sure of that. It would be good to include it with the minutes.
Yes.
All right. So we have a public meeting law training coming up on October 21st. At my strong suggestion, it will be done virtually because it's a very technical subject that doesn't really benefit from direct person-to-person engagement. So, Mary?
I sent a message off to Amanda. I just got notice that there are new public meeting laws that are going to be hopefully adopted October 1st and are not effective until later this year. And do we know if the new public meeting laws are what is going to be included in the training? And then there's also state training that's available for, I think it's called public officials. And I asked the question as to whether we were public officials or not. Because it might be nice to just get the training directly from the state instead of having it filtered through the county. But I'm still waiting on those answers.
Okay, and those are very excellent points to consider, and I'm sure Aika is taking notes. Aika is taking notes on these. All right, so we have announced that. We have about 15 minutes. Next up on the agenda is the Significant Natural Resources Subcommittee. Ordinances 901 and 902 have been reviewed by the Planning Commission and is going to go before the board here shortly. Jim or Fran or Jill or any SNR fan, what do you got?
Well, we did meet this morning, and I guess our first big question was, at the last meeting of this group, it was approved for the CCI to send the letter that we had prepared that was kind of lengthy to the Planning Commission and the commissioners. And at the steering committee, Mary Manso had boiled it down, consolidated it down to 2 pages, and we looked at it very quickly, but we agreed that that should get out.
Did I not send that?
Yes, it went.
Okay, good.
Okay, so our concern is that what we approved was not sent out. There was an extra paragraph put in at the top that had some issues that don't deal with wildlife habitat or Goal 5 needs. So we were concerned that the first paragraph was not something that was approved at the steering committee level. And how does that match up with public meeting laws? And anyway, that's one of our concerns. We had our meeting this morning. We talked about wildlife we saw. I thought some of the most interesting was that there was a mama bear there with her cubs. And but the other thing is, here we are, we're going through this process for years on the significant natural resources. October 1st, just a couple of weeks away, will be the first hearing on the ordinances, and then a couple of weeks later will be another one. I have a graphic that they had as far as how it could stretch out. The Planning Commission had approved 901, recommended 901, and they on 902 they recommended some engrossments that were close votes. So we're still working with that, but we did get a letter from Ken Dobson, who had been representing CPO 4M and Jill Warren on some of these issues and the appeals. And he put together a really good letter that our SNR committee unanimously supports, and we would like to have the CCI supported also. So it's a matter, I guess, of getting it out to you, maybe taking it to the steering committee whenever they're meeting. Are they meeting tomorrow, Bruce?
Yes.
What time?
11.
No,
Okay.
noon. It got rescheduled for noon, didn't it?
No, that was I had a conflict that got resolved, and it will go on as scheduled at 11.
So you better let people know that it's going to go on at 11, because I got a message saying it was going on at noon.
Okay, that gives me something to do.
Sorry.
So we were wondering if we could get the CPO to support it, it talks some specifics about the codes, the community development codes, and what's there and what's not. And we're hopeful that the CCI can support it in one way or another, whether it's doing a separate letter or saying we agree with most of it, whatever. So I would like to make a motion that this letter from Ken Dobson, an attorney, be reviewed by the steering committee quickly tomorrow, and I can send you out copies of it later tonight.
Okay.
And as part of that, reviewed and respond.
Well, if there's things you want to add, that's fine, but I think it's a really tight, dense letter, and it really puts forth a number of issues.
Well, but you want us to do something more than review it. You want us to do something with the letter after it's been reviewed.
Endorse it.
Ah, okay.
CPO 4M has endorsed the letter. We have unanimously gone through a process to support Ken Dobson's letter.
So the motion is for the planning or the
steering committee
to review and endorse Ken Dobson's letter. And I would second that.
Okay.
It's on the agenda for the steering committee tomorrow.
Do we need a vote?
I guess we do. Everybody in favor, can you raise your hand on the raise hand button? Oh, Fran, you're waving your arm.
Since Fran's here, I'm not voting.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm here as tree keepers. Remember, I'm here as tree keepers, Mary Lou.
Mary Lou,
I make a I just want to make a comment, okay? Everybody, I've been working this particular issue for 15 years, and I'm the lone guy out there. I have not seen Ken Dobson's letter, just FYI. And I'm a pragmatic environmentalist here, and I am not against what Washington County is attempting to do here because we have a huge problem in this particular Southwest Washington County transportation area, and it's intense.
It is.
And so just so you know, you can go ahead and vote for it.
This is not transportation, Fran.
901, 902 is what we're talking about.
Yes, and that's not transportation. 883 or whatever it is transportation.
So, but I guess the question I have is if we vote for this, does that mean steering committee is obligated to endorse, or are we considering endorsement?
I think considering.
You have to consider it.
Okay, I want to be sure that that's
you
what
haven't read it yet, so you can't. You've got to read it and see
exactly.
But I wanted what you think.
I wanted to be sure that consider was part of that motion.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Well, the Significant Natural Resources Steering Committee, we read it and liked it and approved it unanimously.
Okay, I think Gretchen has her hand up to make a comment, or are you voting?
Can I just retract? Mary Lou was correct. Mary Lou I got things confused. Absolutely. I am in support of the CCI SNR and the letter and everything. I'm sorry. I got
Jim,
the ordinance wrong.
Can you mail this out to the CCI, or can you give it to ICA for her to send out to the whole CCI in advance of the steering committee meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Just send it to ICA. Is ICA all I need to send it to, or do I send it
to ICA? ICA, will you be able to send it out in the morning before or tonight even?
Oh yeah, I should be able to do that.
Thank you. Okay, now let's take a vote by the CCI as to empower the steering committee to review and consider endorsing. So everybody, raise your hand.
Bruce, are you going to discuss who gets to vote? You have to be a CCI member, or
yes,
if you're not a CCI member, if your member from your CPO is not in attendance, you can vote as an alternate.
Okay, is Virginia not here?
No,
Correct.
Virginia is not here.
Okay, but you're here.
I are.
We get 2 votes. Each
So-
CPO gets 2 votes.
Okay.
Right, and I'm here for tree keepers, not for CPO one.
So Mary Lou, you get to vote.
Okay. Okay. I'm
Okay.
putting up my hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Oops.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Did you count
Yeah.
Mary Lou?
There.
Who?
Mary Lou, did you count?
Me.
Yes,
I
think
just
so.
stuck my hand up there.
10, 11, 12. Any, okay, now.
No,
take
there's
a-
13 if we count you, Bruce.
13, yes. 13, anybody opposed to this radical act? I don't see it. So
Oh,
the CCI steering
How
committee
about
is
abstentions? Are there any abstentions?
abstentions.
Yeah. Okay. We're good.
Jill, are you voting or is your hand up?
Is Jill here?
Okay, yeah, well,
What?
she's Jill's phone is in the attendees.
oh, yeah.
Okay, there we go. We have done all that. The steering committee is meeting tomorrow, 11 to 1 at the website that is on the county's webpage. It's a Zoom link that's on the county's webpage for the CC. If you go to washingtoncounty.or.gov and search for CCI, you'll be taken to the page, and at the bottom is the steering committee link. And I would encourage anybody who is interested to show up, even if you're not formally a member of the CCI, to contribute to what will surely be a rollicking discussion tomorrow. Given that it is the time's up, and we've run out of formal agenda items, I would be happy to consider a motion to adjourn.
Actually, can I put out a plea
Or whatever else we need to
plea
do.
there for volunteers for the communication subcommittee? Virginia Bruce is out of commission for a while and she has been the chair. And there's some good work that could happen on the communication subcommittee, but we're in need of a chair or just more people willing to participate. So
Yeah, Caleb is you don't have to chair the thing to be involved.
Yeah, is there going to be a meeting? Is it tomorrow or the next day?
No,
it's I want to say the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay, yeah, you can count on me.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, the second Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m.
It's the second Wednesday? Okay.
That's what the website says. And so, yeah, it's washingtoncounty.or.gov/OEICE/committee community involvement.
And that's probably Virginia's Zoom link.
Probably so.
Which probably will not work.
I will attend to that.
Okay.
Mary, is she okay?
Well, no, Virginia has been hit with a variety of health issues that has reduced her capacity to manage a keyboard. She has tremors as well as.
Oh my gosh.
And so she has suspended publication of the Cedar Mill News.
Oh my word.
Yes,
That's
it is
terrible.
It is tragic.
I'm so
So
sorry.
if anybody has the wherewithal to step in and even do the online version of the Cedar Mill News without going through the layout for the print version, contact me, please. I talked to Chaz Hundley, who publishes the Gales Creek newsletter, and he was quite in awe of what Virginia has been able to accomplish doing the Cedar Mill News. I have inherited the responsibility to run the Cedar Mill Cider Festival coming up.
Oh my gosh, no wonder
Um,
she hasn't answered me.
Yeah, no, she's yeah, it's definitely
Oh dear.
a sad situation. So the Cedar Mill Cider Festival
Yeah.
hosts uh which has a lot of community involvement, is Sunday, October 6th.
Wow.
I've been trying to sign up and I don't know how to do it now.
Sign up for what?
Well, for tree keepers, we need a tent, a table, and 2 chairs. And
Well,
she's
so
always been the one. She's
yes,
always
she's connecting me with the Park District, Karen Dobson, I think, is the person who's going to be running it.
I'm sorry,
And-
did I miss a motion to end the meeting?
No, we
yeah,
have no.
Okay, thank you.
But we
Sorry.
probably should, and then talk about Virginia after the meeting has ended. So I would move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Yeah, we need to stop the
Okay,
recording.
I think that we've okay, good. We're adjourned. I will contact you, Mary Lou, about the cider festival.
Okay, thanks.
And
Stop the
Bruce, could you copy
recording.
me, please? Because we're doing it together.
Yes. Fran. Okay.
Always something. Oh,
I think, well, it's we've already adjourned, so anything for the good of the order has been stated. And so thank you for attending. The 4 attendees who stuck with us to the end, thank you. And the world is run by those who show up, at least so far. Okay, good night.
Every day in every way.